You want some French fried potatoes?
I reckon.
All right then.
Mm,
All right then.
or two.
Mm-hmm.
I reckon.
All right then.
Sweet fried potatoes. Mm.
Okay, welcome back to NostalgiaCast. I'm Johnny Craddock,
And I'm Darren Lundberg.
and today we're going to be covering Sling Blade, 1996 film written for the screen based on his short by Billy Bob Thornton and directed by Billy Bob Thornton and starring Billy Bob Thornton,
Mhm.
also starring John Ritter and J.T. Walsh. Um,
Dwight Yoakam.
Dwight
Yeah.
Yoakam. Oh yeah, Dwight Yoakam.
And Robert Duvall, which is weird
Which is really
because
weird.
he just passed this week. And I
Yeah.
texted you, I was like, Robert Duvall just died. And you're like, why do we keep picking movies where the people die in them? And for some reason, I didn't, because I've only seen this once before, maybe twice before this, and I did not remember Robert Duvall was in it. So I didn't get your joke. I just thought that, oh, since we covered, I bet we covered something else with him in it, like recently. And so I was like, oh, that's probably why. No,
Yeah.
yeah. And so I was like, and then as soon as he popped up, I was like, oh, Robert Duvall.
Yeah.
Okay, now I get it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I remembered
interesting.
he was in it, but he's forgettable
Yeah,
in
yeah.
this
He
movie. Yeah.
doesn't have, he's just a
Yeah.
presence. Yeah,
Yeah, there's no
interesting.
reason for him to be in this. It
Yeah,
could have
yeah.
been anybody.
Right.
But we'll talk about that. Anyway, so Darren, this came out in 96.
Hmm.
And I left for a mission in 1997,
Yeah.
and I didn't hear about it until then. And I was in Cincinnati, Ohio at the time, and a person that I was talking to told me about this movie they had just watched. And I was like, "Oh, what movie?" And it's called Sling Blade. And I was like, "Oh, what's it about?" And so she went ahead and told me the whole premise, told me, what it was about and kind of how much she liked it.
Hmm.
And I was like, "Oh," so I made a mental note that when I get back from my mission, I have to watch Sling Blade. So it was on my list of movies to watch when I got back. I think it was 1999 when I first saw it.
Hmm.
I just saw it by myself in, in my house.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I remember just like really liking it. Like I remember just being like blown away by the performances, Billy Bob Thornton's performance. I loved Dwight Yoakam's performance. I thought that was amazing. And I just come from Kentucky, that whole area, and so like I knew people like this. I
Hmm.
mean, I interacted with them, I met them, I talked with them, and this is how they talked, and this is what they sounded like, and this is so when I watched it, I was like, yeah, I mean that's right on the money. These are those characters. I knew people like that. I met people like
Hmm.
that and talked with them. So that's why I was so impressed with the performances because it was near perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
Except for one. There's one guy that I think fails miserably, and that is the lawnmower shop owner. I think he's horrible. Um, they should
Okay.
have recast that guy.
Uh-huh.
Somebody better. I know the whole like small town, hick, kind of vibe they're going for with those characters, but anybody else be more interesting than that guy. That guy was not interesting at all. I hate when he's on screen. I hate his scenes. I don't like watching those scenes
Okay.
because I think he's such a bad actor.
Yeah.
But everyone else does a pretty good job.
Okay.
Anyway, that's my history. I want to hear your history.
Well, this 96 is what we would call the year of the indie. I remember at the Oscars, I know English Patient was the big winner that year, but you also had Shine. You also had Fargo, which we've talked about. Train Spotting, Breaking the Waves. We've mentioned that a couple times. Lone Star, Big Night, Bottle Rocket, Wes Anderson. You
Yeah.
had all these independent movies. For some reason, the Academy latched on to these. And I know that Jerry Maguire was the only major blockbuster from a major studio to make that Best Picture roster. And so again, I don't know why they latched onto these. I know why we latched onto these movies. We talked about Pulp Fiction in our first 90s Palooza season. And you and I, when we watched Pulp Fiction, it felt so new. It felt like it was a new visual language, a new film language that was being born. And we couldn't believe we were hearing this kind of dialogue. We were seeing these kind of images. We are getting like juxtaposition of stories and how they three stories like intermingling. We had never really experienced anything like that in our like our primitive movie going years. And when we walked out, we are like, what was that? And we were just obsessed with it
Yeah.
because of the way it made us feel. And that's why we watched True Romance and Reservoir Dogs and, Jackie Brown. We got hooked on, the Tarantino feel. And I think 96 is like the apex of that, where you had all these filmmakers that were like, I can do that. I can make a big, impactful movie. And I remember sitting in the theater for The English Patient, sitting in the theater for Shine, sitting in the theater for Bottle, it's just, and I don't know. I don't like you said you loved this as a kid. And I think maybe at the time, because we talked about it in Pulp Fiction, I think we just saw it at the time that our teenage brains were just, this is what I need, right? Chemically, I'm responding to this. And then when you grow up, like we talked about Pulp Fiction being like, Tarantino like wringing his hands and like laughing all devil, look what I can do, that kind of thing. And we watch it as adults going, yeah, but you don't need to rub it in my face. I think we look at it a little bit different, and I
Yeah.
think we age out of it, if it makes sense. But I know watching Sling Blade, it was one of those movies that, and again, it was at Carillon Square. I remember sitting down for it and watching the movie. I'll tell you about the experience watching the movie in a sec, but it just felt like a new voice. It felt like a new way of storytelling, and and a visual language or dialogue, and the way characters just the way they're presented on screen. And it reminded me a lot of 70s cinema. We covered again 70s Palooza. There was a rut that filmmakers fell into and movies fell into, and then all of a sudden 70s movies kind of reinvigorated that again with the movie Bratz and Kubrick, all this stuff. And Malik, where all of a sudden it felt fresh and new. And the 90s, I feel, was another breath of that, another gust of that in our faces. You know what I mean? And so this independent cinema, it felt like, oh, this is a new language and I want to check these things out. Even if I don't like the movie, at least I'm getting a new feeling and a new experience from it. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? You know what I mean
Yeah.
by that?
Exactly. I mean, we did kind of get hooked on it. It was fresh and exciting and new. And so when we found anything like it that reminded us of that feeling that we had, we wanted to watch it. We were gorging ourselves on all this independent cinema and all this
Yeah.
stuff that we were seeing. And it was exciting. And so this definitely does fall into that category.
Absolutely. And it's weird because it did impact me, but the way that I saw it at Carillon Square, I've never seen this happen before, since they projected the screen too low so that
Oh,
everybody was cut off right about here in the frame. And you could see the lights and the microphones up above, like the booms. And so the whole time you're going, is this how they made the movie? But then you learn about framing and like matting and things like that. And you just realize, oh, they just projected the frame too low. So we're getting the stuff that we're not supposed to see. And
right.
again, I did see it in between then and this time. When I did watch it on video, going, was that really how I watched it? And yeah, you watch it on DVD and it's like, oh, this is, it's obviously I didn't see the right version because you don't see any of that on the DVD. I just thought it was a very
Yeah.
funny experience, but I still felt Billy Bob Thornton's voice watching the movie, even though it didn't feel like I should be watching the movie that way.
Yeah. Well, this movie is based on a short film called some people call it a Kaiser Blade. Is that what it's called?
Some folks call it a sling
Some
blade.
folks
Yeah.
call it a Sling Blade. Okay.
She says
And
again and again here. Yeah.
he didn't direct the short though.
Yeah. It was George Hickenlooper, I believe
He
was
can
the name
loop
of the
it.
guy.
Yeah, that's right. Have you seen the short?
I did. It's online. It's about 25 minutes. JT Walsh, again, RIP JT Walsh. He's in the short, so he repeats like the same character. It's interesting.
Mhm.
Molly Ringwald
She's the
plays
reporter, right?
no. He's JT Walsh is the crazy
No,
like the
no,
sex
she's
fiend.
the reporter.
Oh
Molly
yeah,
Ringwald.
she's the reporter. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was like Molly Ringwald, so she's the reporter for the high
right.
school or whatever. And then there's a doctor. It's not the guy that plays him in this movie. What's the guy's name? Woolridge. It's James Hampton in this, and in the
Okay.
short, it's Jefferson Mays. The thing that I noticed, the whole short is just it plays exactly the same, and it basically just ends when Carl gets out. So the point of the short is, can a person that's incarcerated for murder, should he be released? That's the whole point of the short. And I think Billy Bob Thornton, he just elongated that premise. He used this as a way to get funding. So he would show this as like a flash reel. Is that what you call it? Like
Yeah.
to get people interested and kind of get money for it. So he bankrolled it into this movie. But that's all the short is. The main difference though is the guy that plays Woolridge. His name is Jeffrey. He plays him. as this like sniveling kind of, oh, I can't talk to women, and he's all shuddery. And there's a part where the reporter asks, "Do you think you'll kill again?" And it cuts to the doctor going, "Shh," like he's all nervous. And I'm like, I didn't
Yeah,
need
yeah.
that. It's weird. Like
Okay.
I like the way that they played. This whole movie is about good old boys, right? And so the way that they play Woolridge in here, he's just a family man. I like the part when he takes Carl home or whatever, and the daughter's like, why can't I sleep in my own bed?" Like, well, Carl's company, that's he's just a good old boy, like a southern like doctor. I
Yeah.
like that they played it a little more calm, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
basically the same. Billy Bob Thornton's a little more stocky in it, but it's the same voice and everything like that. It's just the framing is a little bit better in the movie versus how it was in the short.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, so this movie also won an Academy Award for the screenplay that
Yeah.
he adapted from the short film. Briefly want to talk about the screenplay. I I really like it. I think a lot of the dialogue, like I said, I knew people like this, and so it sounded real to me.
Mm.
This is how Southern people talk.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like this is what the accent sounds like. This is how they um, converse with each other. So
yeah, yeah.
like for me, it was like wow, the screenplay is really really well written.
So it's
Do you have any?
authentic.
Yeah, very authentic. Do you have anything to say positive or negative about the screenplay?
I okay. So the main thing when I watched it again, when you watch independent cinema, it feels like, oh, nothing really happens and characters just wandering. And as a teen or whatever, as a 21-year-old, like pretentious teen looking for like movies that appeal to my soul or whatever, it feels like, oh, it wanders, but that's the point, man. That's life, man. You know what I mean? And so
Mhm.
I walked away from the movie thinking, yeah, this is just life, and that's really it. And like, oh, it's just a kind of a rambling screenplay. But then watching it this time, doing my research for it, I found out that this is actually a Southern Gothic storytelling. It's actually a subgenre of fiction. I think theater, music, TV. It's influenced by Southern culture and stuff like that. It highlights like the disparity between regular people, I guess, regular people and Southern people, place in their social order, things like that. And this is the kind of story that William Faulkner would write about, Flannery O'Connor would write about, Tennessee Williams, Truman Capote, Harper Lee wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, my favorite novel. I was like, oh, that's American Gothic, that's Southern Gothic, you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
so I feel kind of dumb that I never did that research. I just love To Kill a Mockingbird for To Kill a Mockingbird, but finding out that it fits this Southern Gothic way of storytelling is very interesting. And it gave me a new perspective on the movie. So instead of it feeling like a rambling kind of that's life incoherent, taking its time kind of, I love the way that it suits that. Does that make sense? It
yeah,
enhanced the way I feel about the movie and the screenplay because, oh, there's a point to this. It's following this same thing. And so if you look, I wrote these things down. There are basically some characteristics of Southern Gothic. You've got the grotesque protagonist, which is obviously Carl Childers, right? He's What's great about Thornton's performance here is you're threatened by him, but you're comforted by him at the same time. Like it's
yeah,
comforting, but he can break out. Like you don't know what
yeah,
he's going to do. It's unpredictable. You've got the juxtaposition between past and present. Again, Carl's abusive past kind of is guiding him and defines him in a way. And it's interesting as soon as you're introduced to Doyle, you're like, oh, this is a ticking time bomb. If you've ever read a screenplay before, you know exactly what's going to happen. And the whole
yeah,
movie is
yeah,
about how it gets to that point.
yeah, yeah,
You've got a lot of dark humor. So again, he's murdered a couple people, right? Why are we laughing at this guy? I love the way that he's so good at fixing things. And
yeah,
I agree with you, the guy that owns the shop. But I like how the guy's like, the Lord works in mysterious ways. Like I don't know, like he's an idiot, but he's able to to fix all this stuff. And it's as he's talking with Woolridge, the shop owner, they're talking about stuff, and in the foreground you see Scooter like fixing the lawnmower, right? And he can't get it and everything, and they're talking about Carl, and then Woolridge says, or the shop owner says, "Come over here and take a look at this lawnmower. Let's see what's wrong with it." And Carl takes one look, and like, "It ain't got no gas in it." Like that was it. And so
yeah,
again, it's this murderer, but you're laughing at him because like, why is he smarter than these supposed smarter guys? You know what I mean?
yeah,
He's Yeah. Anyway, so we'll come back and talk about that, but it's also like about decay and social dysfunction. So the way that the Doyle character is presented, he's successful, he's presentable, he's genteel, but he's a monster. You know what I mean? So there's that dysfunction in the way people are presented. And again, talking about Carl, he's more of a kind, even though again he's murdered people, he's more of a kind soul. The decay I thought was interesting when he goes to visit his dad. That's the house is so run down and it's decrepit. You're like, how can anybody live here? And the dad is just sectioned off into one room. So again, it's like the decay kind of mimics the way that the father's insides are. You know what I mean? The way
Yeah.
the father's a monster, and the way that he's living kind of represents that. So that's great.
Yeah.
And then there's the moral ambiguity, obviously, with is it is Carl within his right to murder this guy to save Frank and his mom? You know what I mean? Is there's that ambiguity there, or the moral kind of conundrum of the story. So
Yeah.
looking
Well,
at
Carl
this,
answers that question because he says the Bible says you ought not kill someone, but
yeah,
he already answered that question before he even,
right, right.
does that. So,
Yeah. And even the so when he gets baptized and everything, that's him. He keeps talking about the Bible, and his father, I guess, was a religious fanatic or whatever, right? And so they get back, and I was like, is this baptism like superfluous? Does it not? But again, it's just I. I think Carl talking about the Bible, he doesn't understand it, but he knows that there's redemption in it. You know what I mean? And so I think he
mhm.
gets baptized to kind of wash away his sins, not be like his dad. He's able to sense. Anyway, we might come back to that stuff, but I just loved how it fit this Southern Gothic kind of plot skeleton. I'm like, oh, I get what he's doing now. I get what the point of this is, and it slots into all these little categories. And so, screenplay wise,
Yeah.
structure wise, I just think that from that point of view, from the Southern Gothic point of view, it really works from that perspective. And yeah, there's some great screenplay stuff, which we'll come back to. But the dialogue,
Okay.
obviously, he's just got repeated lines, things like that. But yeah, anyway, I really enjoyed the screenplay this time. I don't think that it's as complicated as like Fargo or Lone Star or Jerry Maguire. There are a lot, or even Hamlet, which Kenneth Branagh adapted, is an intelligent, busy screenplay. And it's this one isn't as you know what I mean? It's not as busy, it's not as clever, but it's really simple. And in that simplicity, there's a lot of meaning to it. And I
Yeah.
loved get just feeling the words coming off of the page, I guess.
Yeah, well, we talked about like there being like a cadence and a rhythm during our Frogger episode, and I felt this has that same thing. There is a cadence to it. There is a
Yeah.
rhythm to the way he speaks, and so that again appeals to me. Like I always like respond to things that have rhythm, and so like
Yeah.
when I hear that, I go, oh, my ears perk up.
Yeah.
So I like it for that reason too.
Right.
Um, I definitely want to talk about this real quick before we go into any of the acting and the performances, but. Okay, it's been a while since I've seen it all the way through. I have seen it multiple times, but it's been at least a decade or more. I don't know how long it's been, but it's been a while. And in my memory of seeing this, I remembered it having close-ups and having like all this coverage and these different over-the-shoulder shots and like these close-ups, extreme close-ups, whatever you want to call them. Like
Yeah.
I just remember being that way. And then I watched it again and I was like, where are all the close-ups? Like, wasn't there any? There's like a few here and there. There's very few. But they are there and they're there for a reason. But for the most part, this movie is just, these long static shots of just like people at a dinner table or someone on the back porch or like people standing in the front yard or in the woods. And then the camera really never moves very much. It's
Yeah.
just static and the characters are always just sitting or standing. And so there's not much going on. And so if you're not really invested in the character or the story, then you could get bored. Not that
Yeah.
I got bored. I love it. I love listening to like I say, the way they speak and the dialogue and
Mhm.
everything. And I do like the performances. And so I'm always like captivated by that. But like, man, if you're not careful, you'll find yourself, getting bored with this movie because there's not a lot of, editing going on. There's not a lot of like I say,
Right.
coverage.
Right.
So that surprised me because like I said, my memory was different.
I think maybe the difference is with these indie filmmakers is they just maybe like the movie brats, maybe they're watching all these other movies and like why are they falling into like this boring rhythm that all movies like follow, right? It's the same thing with Orson Welles and Citizen Kane. He just watched all these movies and I can do better than this and I can shake up the format a little bit. And so when you watch Citizen Kane, you're like, "Oh, it feels modern because he was breaking rules. He wasn't
Hmm.
following rules." And I think these indie filmmakers, like I said, they look at Pulp Fiction and they again, they're like, I can do that. I can make a movie like this. I can have characters swear. I can have violence in movies and things like that. And they're like, I'm looking at these action movies, especially in the 80s, because that's this decade of excess. And movies like Top Gun or Rambo or Commando, they're all editing just for sensation's sake. There's nothing, it's just to get you feeling a certain way, not to really tell a story in any, it's just all about getting those, or even the Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Streets. They're just, I don't know. It's just about the excess. It's just about giving you what you've already gotten, just at a more high octane level. And I think these independent filmmakers look at this going, let's calm down. Let me do these long shots because that nobody's doing that. Everybody's cutting. I'm going to have a 7 to 10 minute shot of these two characters just sitting at a table. And sometimes they'll talk, sometimes they won't. So maybe there'll be 2 minutes of silence, and it's different. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. Is that kind of what you're talking
Yeah.
about?
And I think what happens is when they do that, because a lot of times you'll see these films, they'll get critically acclaimed and they'll have all these like, praise from the critics. And then you think, well, I think they think they're being artistic. They think they're,
Yeah.
and really, I don't see the art in just setting the camera up and just letting it sit for 10 minutes. There's a scene in Reservoir Dogs where it's just a shot down this hallway where Steve Buscemi and I think Harvey Keitel are in this back room, like this maintenance closet with a sink and everything and a mirror. And they're just walking back and forth. Sometimes they're walking out of frame and all you're looking at is a hallway. And like it stays there for like at least 10 minutes. It gets really boring. And there's another shot in the same movie with Lawrence Tierney, is that his name?
Yeah. Yeah.
And Chris Penn, and they're talking with what's his name? Michael Madsen, I think.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, another long, boring shot. Nothing happens. It doesn't change. This is just like, I don't know. I don't understand why people think that's artistic. I think we get kind of lost in that, and we think, well, we're being different, so we're being clever, or whatever. I
Yeah.
don't really buy that. I want to have a movie that tells me this story with the same kind of feel, but also don't bore me to death. Like,
Yeah.
show me some coverage, show me some facial expressions, show me some. So I want to see the actor thinking. I want to see like
Mhm.
the subtext, all that kind of stuff. That's why we do those shots because we want to.
Yeah.
We want to. Anyway, if you're investing in the character, you want to follow along with them and go with them, and you can't do that if you're a mile away. You know,
Yeah.
because that shot in this movie where they're in the back porch and the band's playing, you can't even see who's in the band. And then they
Yeah.
cut away from the band's perspective, and it's just they're all on these like lawn chairs, and it's dark, and you can't see them. I have no idea what they're thinking or feeling when they're watching this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on in their thoughts, and I think that's a mistake. I think we should. You got to cover the actors. You got to get coverage. You got to be able to edit a movie together, but yet still keep that feel you're going for. You know what I mean? Which is
Yeah.
possible. You can do it.
Sometimes you feel like when they're in the hospital and he's giving his monologue and it's just the shot of Carl and the lamp. And it goes on for so, and it's a good, well composed shot. But as you're watching it, you're like, oh, he's just trying to call attention to himself. He's like, oh, look at this, look at me, look you get what I'm doing. Do you see what I'm doing? Like my monologue is what's really drawing you in, and it's just me and this lamp, man, And so that's what's gonna get you. And so it feels very independent that way. I think. Like with Reservoir Dogs, my one pushback with Reservoir Dogs now is that shot you're talking about. It just seems like every Sundance movie. And that's the whole point. You're trying to sell yourself. You want to do something that's going to be an instant attention getter. And so the way that you frame shots, you notice that it's just a hallway. You notice that it's just, Carl and Linda just sitting at a table talking to each other for 5 minutes. Yeah, she'll get up and get some coffee or whatever. But I think what's happening is the directors, they want you to notice. They want you to notice what they're doing. They want you to notice that,
Yeah.
oh, look at me. I'm just keeping this shot on these two characters. Isn't this different and clever? But I think the difference, and that's fine. Like I said, when we're watching this as teenagers in the 90s, I think we're just more open to that and like, oh, this is great and it's different. But now we look at it and we're like, yeah, but I get that you're. And again, it only cuts to a close up of Carl when he starts talking about murdering the guy and his mom. So it is an impact when it cuts.
Yeah, but even that shot's too long. Like that, it stays on the same shot forever. I'd rather, cut it differently, show some reaction shots. They do here and there, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's just the same static shot, like the shot pointing down at his face, and
Right.
it's lit darkly. It's weird. It's just, again, it gets boring.
But
Yeah, he's saying some things that are kind of dark and twisted and kind of gets your
uh-huh.
attention, but
It's long.
it
It's
can be
long.
boring because nothing's happening.
Yeah, yeah. You're supposed to be paying attention to the words or whatever. And I get that. This movie's trying to lull you, like you said, people like this. These people actually exist. It's trying to lull you into that. A way that the production, I don't even call it a production design. I think they just went to this town and they just shot it, I think, for like 24 days
Oh yeah.
in Arkansas. And they just got, oh, this doesn't this wash this the wash-o-matic or this laundromat, doesn't this look great? And they just got a shot of him sitting. Like everything feels lived in. Nothing feels like it was just created for that day that they shot it. It feels like this is an actual town. But the
Yeah.
difference here is I think the filmmakers, they want you to notice what they're doing. They're like, look what I'm doing. I'm so clever. They want you to notice the direction. And there's a difference between that and, say, Back to the Future, right? Which is one of my favorite movies, where you do have these long shots, these long oneers that last for 2 to 3 minutes. But the problem is the difference, not the problem, the difference is Michael J. Fox and Claudia Wells are moving around in the shot. So they'll go from a two shot and then they'll move towards the camera. So you get a close up with Michael J. Fox. And then he'll move back and he'll move out of the frame. So you just get a shot of Claudia Wells as Jennifer. And then they'll join again and they'll walk and they'll sit on a bench. There'll be a car that kind of guide, or the truck that he wants to buy, that guides his attention. And when the truck moves in, it makes you notice that the tables where that woman, the charity is sitting that wants to save the clock tower,
Mhm.
it's a very Spielberg thing to do. Zemeckis was a Spielberg protege. Spielberg does this all the time, where you can have a shot that's long, but there's so much movement within the frame that you never get bored by it, and you
Exactly.
never notice that it takes. I watched a YouTube essay this weekend, and I was like, I've seen Back to the Future 100 times. How come I've never noticed this before? And that's because the director, Zemeckis, he just wants you to notice you're watching this happen. You're not noticing the camera work. And when it's pointed out to you, like, wow, that is awesome. And it's so energetic. And I'm never bored, but I only notice the dialogue. I'm never noticing the camera work because everybody's moving so much and the dialogue is
Yeah.
so. I think that's the difference here is Spielberg and Zemeckis can frame this to happen so that you're never called attention to the, you know, and it's like the independent filmmaker will look at that and go, but I want you to notice my camera work, right? I want you to notice that I'm just on this shot for 2 minutes and nothing's happening. Aren't I? I'm not trying to knock the work that Billy Bob Thornton did here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying. Like it just gets, and Barry Markowitz is the cinematographer. I want to mention his name, not by poking fun at him, but he did the cinematography here. But there's just a difference in filmmaking, and they've moved away from that, obviously. But like I said, it's a different voice that we're getting than what we're getting now.
Yeah. And it was fine back then, but nowadays I don't think this movie would.
Yeah, it wouldn't be shot like
Yeah.
this.
No. Yeah. It wouldn't. It'd be shot a lot differently.
Yeah.
All right. So let's cover the acting.
Okay.
Okay. So Billy Bob Thornton obviously gives a stellar performance as Carl Childers. Um, I
Understated,
yeah,
really
I
understated.
I watched an interview where he was like going in and out of character of
Oh
this
my God.
character, and it was like really fun to watch. Like he just like instantly can like go into character, and they were like, "And where's the voice come from?" And he was like, "It just comes out." It's like it's
Yeah.
just funny because you make that face, you know, kind of like squint your eyes and do the whole mouth thing, and suddenly you start talking with a scratchy voice. But no, I just think this is what I'm talking about. There's moments where you see Carl thinking, you see his blinking, his like his eyes moving, and like he's just sitting there stoic, but he's thinking. And there's like one scene with John Ritter where he's like, "You seem like you're always deep in thought. What are you thinking about right now?" And he's like, "I was thinking about getting some more French fried potatoes or whatever." You know.
Yeah.
But anyway, like
Mhm.
when Doyle's like being really mean to the mom and the son and to you know Vaughn, that's when you really see him thinking. But that's a moment where they could have had a close up, and they could have had this moment where you see Carl like you know contemplating what he's gonna do about this bad guy that's like might hurt people he cares for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, the performance is there. You just have to look for it because you're so far away. The camera's so far away. You have to kind of really you struggle to see it, but it is there. And
Yeah.
I think it's to be commended because you still can see it. But I think better coverage would have done the performance even better.
The scene that comes to mind is after Doyle has had his band play, and it's the one shot where they're in the living room, and it's what's really funny. And again, this comes to the screenplay, the juxtaposition of Doyle is a monster. You expect his friends to be monsters, but they're not. They're good old
Yeah,
boys. They're kind of dumb. They're like, why don't we ever have some like lyrics in here? Like we just, and then Morris like launches into this like poetry reading, and they have like little bongo drums in the soundtrack, and it's you feel really good and you're having a good time with these characters, and that threw me off because I was like, oh, Doyle's gonna have monstrous friends, but no, they're not. And when Doyle we'll come back to Dwight. I don't know why I'm talking about Dwight Yoakam right now, but when he goes off and it's just it gets really, it's funny at first, but then it gets really scary and then it
Hmm.
gets really sad. But the way that the cameras, it's just set up so that it feels like you're in that living room and you're just it's like you're watching it, which is
Yeah.
fine. I get that, but it's like, and you're relying on the acting to kind of do stuff. But yeah, more coverage might, it's just interesting that that's the way that they frame it. But again, going back to Billy Bob, the way that he's just sitting there as Carl, not really reacting, just again, the way that Carl is presented, they use the word, and I apologize for you using this word. They use the word retarded a lot. I thought it was interesting. We don't use that word now. Back in 96, I think there was even starting to be a pushback. But I learned that in the DSM 3 at the time, it's the diagnostic, it's basically it's the book that defines all mental illnesses. In the DSM 3 in 96, it does have mental retardation as the official medical term for anybody that's kind of handicapped, right? But by 96, I think the DSM 5 when it came out, it got rid of that.
Hmm.
And so now it's only called intellectual disability. So when the DSM gets rid of that word, now it's not a medical term. Now it's like a derogatory kind of you know, a slur in a way, you know what I mean? Not in a way, it's an
Yeah.
absolute slur. So I thought it was interesting, first of all, that in the South, that's just the words they're going to use. They're kind of cut off from everybody. They're just, again, they're old fashioned. That's just how they're going to, they don't know any better, right? They're not as enlightened as like people in the North, I guess is what you could say. But I just thought it was interesting that in 96, that was a word that we used freely. Now we
Hmm.
don't use it anymore, but it captures a time and a place here. But then it's also interesting that they only use the word, well, they say the word queer, but they also say homosexual, but that says those are the only two words they use to describe Vaughn. But anyway, going back to the way that Carl is presented, he's presented as somebody that has an intellectual disability where he can converse with people. He has conversations with people. He can sense certain things. I like how when Frank is talking and he keeps saying words like pecker and like murder, and he's like, you know, you're a little boy. You shouldn't be talking about, you know, don't talk about that stuff. You shouldn't be thinking about this. And so he's aware of things. I think he's
Yeah.
just got the social awkwardness. Like
Well,
he doesn't have the same intellectual function, right?
yeah,
He
because he grew up
can't.
in a barn,
Yeah,
slept in
and
a
it's
hole.
abused,
Yeah.
right? And so that's just the way that, and he had these symptoms that came about during childhood, during his developmental years. And so
Yeah.
the way that they present him, again, you look at the experts looking at this performance, and it's nothing that's really based in reality. It's more of like a fairy tale version of what this kind of person would be like. But it is interesting how he can sense certain things. And I think he realizes that, you know, I murdered. I didn't know what I was doing. Like I thought that what I was doing was wrong. Now I realize what happened. I acted out of, you know, passion and out of like anger. And now I'm above that. Now I don't do that anymore. I just thought that was interesting. This perform again. It's a very. It's does it make sense if I say this is a less embarrassing Forrest Gump? Like Forrest Gump felt like very cartoonish,
Yeah.
and it's. I think it's to the point where again, like I talked about. Thornton is very calming. Like he calms Frank, he makes Frank feel calm, but he makes everybody feel frightened. It makes everybody feel scared because there's
Yeah.
just Thornton based this character off, I believe, of a kid that he knew that was abused and did live in a like a shed in the back because his parents thought he was of the devil, but it turns out he just had polio
Okay.
and they didn't know how to handle it. And so he based it off of that. It's just the way that he's when he goes to the dollar store and he's standing in the background and you see Vaughn and you see Linda kind of reacting to him. The way that he's posed makes them feel weird. But
Yeah.
we're not threatened by him. You know what I mean? We're not threatened by him at all. It's just the little awkwardness that's going on. I think that was a
Yeah,
very
it's like
interesting
that scene
performance.
where he orders the French fried potatoes for the first time, and the clerk is like,
Yeah, that's
it
Jim
kind of,
Jarmusch. That's Jim
yeah,
Jarmusch,
Jim
right?
Jarmusch, yeah, and he kind of gets creeped out
Yeah.
at the end of it. Kind
Right.
of funny because it is kind of creepy when he just stands there and doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
It's awkward and weird, and you go, "What's wrong? Something's off with this guy," you know. So I like those moments in the movie where they do that, where people get creeped out by him. It's pretty
Well,
funny.
it makes you think because that's just the way that he is. He doesn't mean anything, but he just doesn't
Right?
know how to react. When the girl that he dates brings him the flowers, it takes him a while to react. He doesn't know what's going on, and
Yeah.
she's not creeped out by it. that's the way she is. And so
Yeah.
I like the way that that plays with your, there's literally a shot when he's walking into town and he breaks the fourth wall when he's looking at the camera for a little bit.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I was like, is this a POV of like somebody passing him in a car and they're staring at him? What's this guy doing? And he like looks at him like, what's your problem? And it just seemed to me like, oh, we're staring at him like, when he's talking to Woolridge saying, I guess I have to get used to people staring at me. I was like, oh, is that putting us in the car seat? Like we're looking at him and judging him? I thought that was very interesting.
Interesting. Yeah, I never thought of that before, but that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely strong performance. I mean, I think he carries the movie. I think
Yeah.
didn't he
You,
get nominated for an Academy Award for it?
yeah, he was nominated for Best Actor.
And
You
Jeffrey
feel you
Jeffrey Rush won,
Jeffrey
right?
Rush one with the when he's hanging around Frank, he's very warm. He's not gonna hurt this boy.
No.
I think that's just because he recognizes himself in this boy. And again, that's why the movie ends the way it ends, because Frank is headed in a direction where he's going to be wounded or hurt, and he's going to be damaged for the rest of his life. And again, Carl recognizes this. He has the wherewithal to at least recognize this is not going to happen again to this. I need to do something about it, right? I don't matter. This kid matters. And I like that warmth in his performance. And again, I'm looking at the picture of him behind you. That doesn't look like Billy Bob Thornton at all. Like,
No.
that
Yeah.
I know. So again, I love when an actor disappears into a performance like this.
Yeah, yeah, me too. So the only other performance that really for me is mentionable is Dwight Yoakam's
Uh,
performance. Everyone else is fine. They do a good job, but they're kind of stale. They're kind of like I say, they're kind of boring, but they do fine.
I do want.
Except
I want to talk about John Ritter after we
okay,
talk about
that's
Dwight Yoakam.
fine. But I think Dwight Yoakam should be next because he's my favorite performance in this movie. Like I hate the character, but I love watching him do it. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like I say, I knew people like that. I talked to those people like that, and they're scary because they're like a loose cannon, and you never know when they're gonna snap, when they're gonna,
that's
blow
how
up.
abusers are. Yeah,
Oh my gosh. And so when you see him, like you don't know what he's gonna say or do and when he's gonna say or do it. And so you're on pins and needles the entire time that he's on screen. And he just delivers it perfectly. I love watching him do this character. I hate the character, but I love watching
yeah, of
Dwight
course.
Yoakam play it.
Right, right, right. There's for some reason it reminded me of Tim McGraw. Like Tim McGraw's, he's one of my favorite performers. We've seen him in concert a few times, but he's also a very natural actor in the movies he's been in, like the Blind Side or Tomorrowland or Friday Night Lights. And I don't know if that's because he's a natural performer on stage. Dwight Yoakam's the same way here. He's got just a very natural. I say charisma. When I say charisma, that's kind of a positive, but there's nothing positive about Doyle. You know what I mean? He's a pathetic loser, like scary loser that's going to do some damage here. But in the same way that Tim McGraw just is able to be natural and not like, oh, I'm acting, I'm a big country star. He kind of disappears into the role and he's small instead of acting big. It's the same thing with Dwight Yoakam here. He becomes this. I would never know that he was a country singer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just he seems like one of these people. It just seemed very realistic. Like I said, you have the thing where they're at the playing in the band and then the neighbor shouts at him and it's funny. It is funny.
Yeah.
And he yells back at him. And if you didn't know who Doyle was, if you weren't getting his history, you wouldn't think that, you would think the same thing. You think this guy's hilarious. And then when they're in the room and he just again, he snaps, he throws, they're not talking about anything offensive even. He
Yeah,
just
I
gets
know.
upset, like he can't stand it. And it's just this long where he takes his friend in the wheelchair and he shoves him into the door.
Yeah.
And then his other friend's like, this isn't right, man. You can't keep doing this to us, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And then it's very, and I like that that's all one shot because you can see it play out. You can see everybody change. I think that's
Yeah.
the one difference between that and like with them at the dinner table talking or whatever. You can see everybody change and everybody just kind of tense up. You can see that in their performances, and you wouldn't be able to see how Morris is reacting if you've got a close up on Linda, you know what I mean, or a close up on
Right,
Frank.
right,
You
right.
get the sense of, but going back to Yoakum as Doyle, it's very natural how he goes from quiet to rage to patheticness when Linda and Frank start throwing things at him and he's collapsed on the floor. It's like this guy is a pathetic idiot.
Yeah.
He's not a threat, but this is after he's shoved Linda into a door. It's really violent. You're not on his side, but
No.
I don't know. Yoakum, the way it's the writing too, it's the direction too, it's the performance too. It's all of those things melding to create this character that feels so real.
Right, right. Now when I saw it in '99, I loved the performance, and then Panic Room came out, And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, he's in another movie with Dwight Yoakam. I couldn't
Yeah.
go see it. He was good in Panic Room, but
Right.
it wasn't anything like, his performance in Sling Blade.
Right.
But
Okay.
anyway, so you can talk about Ritter. I don't really care about his performance too much in this one. For me, it's boring. He's more of a comedic actor for me. Like I like him in
Sure.
Noises Off. I like him in the stuff where he makes me laugh. This is
Three's
just
Company.
boring. It's boring for me.
Right.
He's
He's
fine, but it's not anything I
maybe
would.
maybe it comes down to the acting. I like Vaughn as a person. I think he's very kind. I think, and Ritter is able. You would get John Ritter to play this guy, a very decent at his heart, non-threatening, warm person who means well. But again, I like the way that it's the juxtapose between his character and Carl's character because they're both ostracized for different reasons, right? People will look at Vaughn and feel, especially in the South, and you get that from the performance and the writing, is they're going to feel weird hanging around this guy because being homosexual is not something that good old boys are used to. That's not something that they know how to deal with. And so people are just as threatened by Vaughn as they are by Carl. I think that's a very interesting kind of criss crisscrossing between characters. And the same thing with Linda. She's like, I want to mention her name. Who's the actress? Natalie Cannerday. She's very naturalistic. She doesn't call any attention to herself. She just seems again like one of these women that would exist and be abused and be in these relationships. You look at characters like that and they're like, why are you with this guy? Like, and she's ostracized in a way for that because they don't
Mhm.
understand her character. And it's just, you get into these ruts and that's just the life that you live. I just think that, yeah, Ritter doesn't really call attention to himself and it's not a showy performance, but if you want a kind-hearted, sincere person, yeah, get John Ritter. I like seeing him in this. I'm like, oh, I miss this. I miss having a John Ritter in the world because he's a good-natured soul. And I like when they're at the dinner table and he's like, I just want to tell everybody sitting at this table that I love and I care about you. And I'm like, this is such a opposite side of the coin from Doyle. Like this guy's loving.
Yeah.
I love again that it's about Carl. He keeps talking about the Bible, and it took him a year, something like, to read it, and he doesn't really understand parts of it. And I love when he goes to Vaughn at the end, and he's like, I don't know much about people, but like, I don't know if you're somebody who's averse to women. I don't think that makes you less of a good role model and a father to this kid than this Doyle guy who's a monster, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I know that it's against the word of the Lord or whatever, but I don't think God would send somebody like you to Hades, right? I don't think you, and I think that's John Ritter's best acting because he reacts in a way that's like somebody's like said something kind about me. And I don't, and it's the same thing with Lucas Black, who went on to do Fast and the Furious movies of all things. There's a part where he's chatting, I think it's after they play football, and they're walking away, and Carl says, I'm proud of you. And
Yeah.
Frank gets a look on his face like, I haven't, he's just, there's
Yeah. Yeah. He's never heard
joy
that before.
and
Yeah.
it's warm. Maybe he'd never heard that from his real dad, but you get the sense that he hasn't been comforted or haven't been lifted up. And it's the same thing with Vaughn later, where he gets this look on his face like somebody's not judging me. Like this guy that I judged says that I'm not going to hell. I like that, but you're right. It doesn't call attention to itself, but it just embodies what needs to be embodied, I guess.
Yeah. Like I say, he was fine.
Yeah,
I just get bored.
yeah, yeah.
So is anybody else as far as the acting goes that you want to mention
Well,
besides Robert Duvall?
Robert Duvall, it reminded me, I think Ian Holm showed up in Garden State with the Zach Braff directed movie. And it's Ian Holm. You expect him to get this great scene. And finally, when the Zach Braff character, I think, confronts him, Ian Holm like doesn't say anything. And so when the scene ends, you're like, why did you get Ian Holm for that? Like you could have gotten anybody. And it's the same thing with Robert Duvall. I perked up. I was like, I didn't know, like, I guess that's the thing. Anybody could have been that role because he says what, like 8 words?
Yeah.
But I did perk up immediately. I'm like, what an interesting thing that is he going to do? But again, I like that Carl's in there and he's like, I've dreamed about killing you. I could kill you right now, but I'm better than you. I don't have to do this. I can.
Right.
And he goes out, that horrifying story that he tells Frank about how his dad came out with this fetus
Yeah.
and he says, get rid of this. And he
Yeah.
puts it in a shoebox And he's like, I could hear it crying. Just horrific. And the way that Frank's like, that makes me so sad. You should have protected your brother. And again, that's a wake up call. That's what, again, it's all these things that kind of guide Carl to be the protector of this family that he
Yeah.
loves. And when he goes out, say, basically, Duvall has one interesting thing where he's in the chair and he looks around. It's like, I don't know how I'm supposed to handle this. It's very interesting that the way he's framed in his seat in a drunken stupor is the same way they frame Doyle like earlier in the
Yeah.
movie and later. It's
Yeah.
just so again, visually they're telling you exactly what kind of character this person is, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that's all that he does. But I love that Carl goes outside and visits the grave of his brother, and that's what gets him to be bad. He's like trying to make penance for all these. I think it's
Yeah.
interesting. I guess the only thing besides, but again, Robert Duvall doesn't do anything. He's just in there to be. It's great seeing him or whatever, but he doesn't really get a chance to be Robert Duvall. The other actor, I guess I would say, is J.T. Walsh again. You have Ritter, you have Duvall, you have J.T. All these guys that we admired growing up, and these movies are just gone. And at too young an age, I love seeing J.T. Walsh pop up, whether he plays a villain or a good guy. He usually plays villains. I just
Yeah.
like seeing him show. We talked about him in Backdraft, and I thought it was interesting. His character Charles, again, experts will look at Carl and say this isn't a realistic portrayal of what this person would be, but they've said that this Charles guy, that is very realistic. When it has that shot of them in the forensic room just talking, and he's just talking about he's talking in a way about women that's not natural. And again, this guy's a sexual predator, right?
Right.
And the way the experts will say this guy is realistic. This guy actually exists. He will walk around, he will use language, he will try to talk to you in a way that will rile you up and get you upset. This guy exists. And JT Walsh again embodies that. You have the great this movie is so small. You have the moment at the end where he goes, I'm done talking to you. Like, don't
Yeah.
talk to me ever again. That's it. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm better than you. I don't have to do that. I don't know. So I like JT Walsh in there too, but
Yeah. He was good.
and Lucas Black is great. He plays a great little kid. And
Right.
so,
Right. And he has the very authentic Southern accent.
right,
That's
right. Did you think it was interesting too that Doyle, Linda, Vaughn, and Frank, their last
I was
word,
gonna say that.
what is
They
the
all
last
say
word?
Carl at the last thing they say is his name. Yeah, I was gonna say that.
And he doesn't turn around. I thought, whoa, interesting
Yeah.
choice. Once that's
Yeah. I
pointed
thought that
out.
was a really cool way to end it, where they all say his name at the end.
Right.
Um, okay, so when I was gonna watch this movie, we couldn't find it anywhere. So I was like, I don't know where to
Yeah.
watch this
What
'cause I don't
are we
have
going to
it.
talk?
I had it on VHS, but I sold them all or gave them away when I moved to New York, and so I didn't have them anymore. So we didn't know what to replace on DVD. So I don't own it anymore, which I used to. But anyway, I text you, I was like, hey, I can't find it. I don't know how I'm gonna watch this thing. I can't find it on Prime or Netflix, and you sent me a link so I could watch it.
Mhm.
And so I had to watch it over a period of like 3 days because, like I said, I was having a hard time getting through it for some reason.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when I first was going to watch it, I offered my wife to sit and watch it with me, and I want to read what she said because she. And I'm sorry if I laugh as I'm reading it because I laughed when she said it, but I think it's really a funny response. So I said, "You want to watch this movie with me?" And she goes, "I have absolutely no desire to ever watch this movie again. It was painful to watch the first time. It's slow. The story isn't that interesting. The characters are unremarkable, and not one of them is likable or relatable. Billy Bob Thornton gives a great performance, but of an incredibly unlikable character who gives me the heebie-jeebies. His character represents all the worst negative stereotypes about mentally disabled people. There's no real positive message to take away from this film. It just gave me a dark, unsettling feeling in the pit of my stomach."
Had she seen the movie before?
Yeah, once. Yeah,
Okay.
once.
But she just remembered that, okay, that wasn't my
Yeah.
reaction, obviously, watching the movie, but yeah,
So
it's the deep evil feeling in the pit of your stomach is what grabs me there. That's interesting.
yeah. So anyway, that's what she thinks of it.
Okay. Well, what do you agree with or disagree with in that?
I do agree that a lot of the characters are unlikable and like I have a hard time like even though I met these people and know these kind of people, for me it was okay because like I said, I knew these people. I
Yeah.
was around them all the time. So for me it was kind of relatable, but I can see why it's not for her.
Yeah.
But I do agree with the dark, unsettling feeling. You don't really walk away from this feeling like, oh, that was good. I feel better. No, you walk away going
Yeah.
like, oh man, what did I just watch? Like,
Right, right.
you know?
It's the way that the mentally handicapped are presented, like, yeah, that's a definite argument you could make. Somebody I said I think the again the thing with Jonathan Rosenbaum is the critic I wanted to talk about here. His review basically says that most actor, writer, directors, when they make a movie, they're only noticed for their acting and their directing. They're not really noticed for their writing. And I think that's the difference here. I notice the writing and the performances more than I notice the direction is so laid back. And like I said, it's so static that you're forced to look at the performances and listen to the dialogue.
Hmm.
And it feels written, but in a way that it's trying to make a point, I guess. The characters of Terrence, I guess, and Scooter, they don't really exist in the movie other than to give you an idea of a sense of place that these people exist. They're not there as plot points. They're
No.
just there that they're people that are there that are reacting to things. You know what I mean? And so there's nothing. Even Linda's not a very proactive character. Like again, she's I think that's just the way that it is. In that same review that Jonathan Rosenbaum wrote about this movie, is that somebody called this movie misogynistic, and I'm like, I don't know about that. Like, I don't think there are enough women in the movie or to be able to get that. Is it just because Linda doesn't talk? I don't know. I don't know. It's just
Mm.
interesting.
I don't
So,
know.
anything. What do you think about that?
I don't know. Maybe, I mean, it could be because of the JT Walsh, what he talks about. I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe, she
Yeah.
does, she's obviously like battered wife syndrome. Like she
Right.
just, is just kind of giving up on it and just kind of like deals with him. She
Right.
won't leave him for, I don't know why women get in that situation and don't ever leave their abusive husbands, but they don't. They don't know they're being abused at the time, I think is what's going on. They're brainwashed or something.
Yeah.
Um, but anyways, maybe that's what they thought was the misogynistic part of it.
Right. But again, I get what she's saying about it gives you kind of a dark, evil feeling because, yeah, he murders somebody. He murders him at the end. But to me, I just think it's very, very, it's sad. I like when he's talking to Charles at the end, and Charles is like, what's the world like out there? And he goes, it was too big. It was too much for him to handle. Right. Uh, like I said, all these things that are guiding Carl to do what he does, like to murder this guy. And is it the correct thing to do? I don't know, but it does save the mother and the kid. You know what I mean? So I get what she's saying about getting that dark, evil feeling at the pit of her stomach, right? Because there's a murder. Like he murders this guy. Again, I like the framing how you do. It's crazy how he stands up and the camera moves. And again, it goes back to that thing when the camera starts moving or doing something, you're like, oh, something's happening. Like this is
Yeah,
different. And so
yeah,
you wake up a little bit. But I like how it moves in. Dwight Yoakam moves out of the frame. You can still see the mirror in the back. I don't see him move. I don't see Yoakam move out of his chair. And the way that he brings down the lawnmower blade is like, oh, did he move or did he really kill the guy? I like the shot anyway. But the thing is, I get the dark evil feeling, but to me, it's just really sad
yeah,
because you get the scene with JT Walsh and how at the end when he's like, how was the world? And Carl responds, oh, it's too big, right? There's just too much for him to handle. And so I like the juxtaposition again. When Frank is telling Carl about his dad, it's like he didn't get hit by a car. He killed himself on purpose because he couldn't support us. Like I thought he did fine. I would have wanted, but he just didn't feel that way. And so he killed himself. And then he looks at Carl and he's like, you're not going to do that to yourself, are you? And he says, no, I'm not, all that. But in a way, so he doesn't commit literal suicide, but he commits figurative suicide. Again, I love he's basically writing a suicide letter. He goes to each of these people and he's basically saying, I appreciate what you've done. He goes to Vaughn and says, please take care of this family. You're a good man. You're better than the man that they're with. Take care of them. He talks to Linda's like, you've been a good mom, but just know that Frank is something special. And so especially when he talks to Frank and he's like, I just want to tell you that I love you. Like, I'm going to put my arm around you.
yeah. I love
And
that moment, by the way.
here are my books. Like, this is me. You can have me. In a way, he's writing a letter, a goodbye letter. And the music starts up with the guitar, like, and you see him again. You get that shot when he goes to visit Robert Duvall. His face is half in shadow and half in light because he's conflicted, right? That kind of gives you the idea. And it's the same thing when he's sharpening his blade. His face again is in light and dark because he's doing the right thing, but it's a dark thing that he's doing. I just get that Carl is like, I have no room. I can't protect these people, right? I don't belong here. The only place I belong is what I've known these last 25 years. And how I can go back is I can just kill a person and I can be sent back to the same. And he does that. And I like, again, it's funny the way, again, the dark humor, right? It's funny the way that he's talking to Doyle saying, what do I, if I want to call the cops or whatever, what do I do? Like you call 911, tell them to bring an ambulance. And so he goes and he does that. And he's in charge, like Carl's made the decision to save this family, and he's able to get his mustard and biscuit. He's just his own man. He knows exactly what he's doing. It's that one shot where he goes out of frame, gets the mustard, comes back, and he sits and he eats, and he's happy and he's satisfied. And even though
Yeah.
he's smiling at the end, he tells Charles, "Get away from me. Don't talk to me anymore." Like he's in his zone. He's in where
Yeah.
he's supposed to be. And I think who is it? There's another critic. I think it was Emmanuel Levy that says that by opting for a more humanistic resolution, Thornton avoids dealing with the issue of how effective it is institutionalizing the mentally challenged as a corrective measure. And I don't know if that's the point of the movie. Like he's grokking onto there. Yeah, I think in a way that's that ambiguity you're talking. It's just getting you to ask the question like, I'm not threatened by Carl because I'm not doing anything wrong, but it's so sad that he doesn't feel like he has a place. He's
Yeah.
been abused growing up. He's lived in a shed. He doesn't know how to deal with people. Like they try to set him up with a blind date. It doesn't really work, or maybe it could, but he's just not in a place. He spent too long being out of society to be able to survive. It's just very, very sad. But I get what Ruth is saying, but to me, it's just a very sad, bittersweet movie at the end, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I like it. Like I said, I loved a lot of things about it. I love the writing. I love the
Yeah,
acting for the most part.
right.
Um, so watching it again, it was, even though I took a while to get through it, it was satisfying. I still really like this movie, and I would watch it again if I get a
Right.
chance in another decade or so. But anyway, is that it? Anything else that you want to
The
bring up or?
last thing I want to talk about, again, you briefly mentioned that it was hard for us to watch this. And what's funny is I think we take streaming for granted because I was like, oh, I'll be able to find Sling Blade. I'll just download it like a couple nights before. Like I've got no problem. And then you text me and you're like, I can't find this anywhere. And I was like, you're kidding me. Not even on Amazon, which is where I get a lot of these. You're like,
Yeah,
yeah,
me
not
too.
even on there. So I looked on there. Nope, it's not available. It wasn't available on Hulu. Wasn't available on Apple TV. Wasn't available on Fandango. It's nowhere. And as I was trying to find this, my wife looked it up. Elizabeth looked it up, and there are rights issues
Yeah.
because of the music, and they can't stream it somewhere because they're copyright. You can't
Hmm.
release it on DVD because copyright, or you because I checked maybe I should buy it. I'll just be able to buy it on eBay for $5. I'll buy it on Amazon. It'll be here tomorrow. You can't even find it on Amazon for less than like $30 because now it's a
Wow.
collector's item because
Okay.
there are rights issues. And what made that interesting is in it's physical media forever, right? I had a copy of this movie at one point. I know I did, but I don't have it anymore. And I regret that sitting down to watch the movie and realizing, oh, I don't have a way. I found a link and I sent it to you and we were able to watch it, but it had ads in the middle. And so it was
Yeah.
irritating watching it that way. But at
Yeah.
least we're able to watch it. And I was just sitting here thinking, streaming has a lot of positive avenues. I was just in a conversation with somebody talking about how when we were growing up, if we wanted to rent like Ghost of Frankenstein, right? If we had the inkling to do that, we had to go to Blockbuster and drive there. If they didn't have it, well, does any other Blockbuster have it? Somebody would call the other, oh, this other Blockbuster has it. You drive to get it, right?
Right.
And it was hard, but at least you got to watch Ghost of Frankenstein. Now, though, you can have a whole marathon of Frankenstein movies within 5 minutes and you can have them all downloaded on your TV.
Yep.
Again, very convenient. But when you're trying to watch a movie like this and it's not available, I thought that was fascinating that
Yeah.
we were like, oh no, what are we going to do? We're going to have to pick a different movie? Like, how are we going to be able to talk about this? And so, yeah, I just think that physical media, you do need to own these things because streaming, like Christopher Nolan says, somebody else owns these movies. You don't own them. They can pull them from circulation and you won't have access to them anymore because you're relying on streaming. I just thought it was an interesting kind of wake up call to, oh, if I'd had my copy of Sling Blade and decided not to get rid of it, this would not be a problem right now.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have to be interrupted with like Viagra commercials. You know what I
Well,
mean?
if I had my copy, I couldn't watch it anyway because I had no VCR in the house.
Right.
So,
So anyway, I just thought it was a very interesting kind of way to physical media forever. Just make sure you
yeah,
hold on to
yeah.
your stuff.
All right, well, that'll do it for Sling Blade. And for Nostalgia Cast, I'm Johnny Craddock.
And I'm Darren Lundberg.
And he likes the way I talk. I like the way he talks.
I reckon.
All right, then.